My husband forgot our 50th wedding anniversary, but he remembered his first wife's birthday, down to the exact minute she was born. And the moment I realized that, something in me split clean down the middle. I'm glad you're here, because I need someone to hear this. Someone who isn't already part of the life I almost destroyed trying to pretend everything was normal. So, let me pull back for a second, before the storm, before the moment that gutted me. Let me take you to the quiet little town in Pennsylvania where I've spent most of my adult life, in the same house with the same man, believing the same story about who we were. My name is Linda. I'm 71 years old, and until recently, I thought I knew what loyalty looked like. Our neighborhood is one of those places where the mailboxes all lean a little, where the trees are tall because they are older than the families living beneath them, and where people shovel each other's driveways in winter without being asked. It's a small place, predictable, slow, familiar in the kind of way that lets you sleep peacefully because you've walked the same streets for decades. My husband, Mark, is 74. Retired from the local manufacturing plant 15 years ago. I used to tease him that he retired not because he was tired of working, but because he was tired of waking up at 4:30 a.m. He'd laugh and sip his black coffee, always from the same chipped mug with a faded American flag on it. That mug was older than our youngest daughter. We've had a steady life, comfortable, not glamorous, but ours. Our routine was reliable. Breakfast at 7, his morning walk, my gardening, lunch at noon, errands, dinner, TV, bed. You'd think routine gets boring, but when you spend 50 years building a life together, routine feels like a warm blanket. Soft, worn, safe. Our kids, 2 daughters and a son, are grown with families of their own. One's in Ohio, one in Boston, and one just 20 minutes away. They call often. They visit when they can. Holidays, birthdays, the usual. And through all of that, my marriage was fine. Not perfect, not tragic. Just fine. It was the kind of marriage where you know your partner's footsteps in the hallway, where you can tell their mood by how loudly they close a cabinet, where silence isn't awkward, it's just lived in. I had no reason to believe anything was wrong. Not until last spring. Let me paint the picture clearly, because details matter in stories like this. It was early May, one of those mornings where the air is still cold but the sun promises it won't stay that way. I was at the kitchen table, flipping through the Sunday paper. Yes, I still read the physical paper, circling a couple of coupons out of habit even though I rarely use them anymore. Mark walked in, rubbing his eyes, yawning that loud, grumbling yawn he always does. He kissed the top of my head like he always does. He poured his coffee like he always does. He sat across from me. I smiled. He smiled back. Normal. Completely normal. Except it wasn't. Because it was our 50th anniversary. Now, before you jump to conclusions, let me tell you what kind of woman I am. I am not the type to expect diamonds or fancy dinners. I'm not the type to demand he memorize the exact hour he proposed or the number of roses in my wedding bouquet. I'm reasonable. I'm grounded. I'm from the generation that learned to be patient even when you were hurt, to stay quiet even when you desired to speak. But the 50th anniversary, that one matters. It's a milestone you don't just accidentally trip past. It's a half-century of shared life. It's the moment people look at you and say, wow, you don't see that anymore. I had reminded him 2 weeks prior. I had even casually mentioned it the night before, talking about how the kids said they'd take us out to dinner the following weekend. He nodded, smiling, said that sounded nice. So when he sat there reading the paper, sipping his coffee, humming like it was any other day, something pinched inside me. At first, I waited for him to remember. I gave him half an hour, then 2. Nothing. I kept glancing up, hoping he'd suddenly slap his forehead and say, how could I forget? But he didn't. He stayed cheerful, relaxed, unbothered. I tried to prompt him gently. Beautiful day today, I said, pretending to be casual. Kind of special. He nodded. Yeah, suppose it is. Suppose to warm up a bit. A non-answer. A pit in my stomach. Still, I didn't get angry. I swallowed it, Told myself he's older. People forget things. But deep down, a tiny crack formed. Mid-morning, his phone dinged. Loud, bright, cheerful little chime. I didn't think anything of it until I saw his face. He lit up. He smiled wider than I had seen him smile in months. Then he whispered, "Oh wow. I can't believe I remembered. She'd be 72 today." He didn't say who. He didn't need to. I'd lived with Mark long enough to know. He was talking about Elaine, his first wife. She died in her 20s. A car accident. Long before he and I met. I'd always respected that part of his past. Always accepted that her memory would be a soft place inside him. Everyone has a past. Everyone has someone they loved before. But the way he looked at that phone, it wasn't grief. It wasn't nostalgia. It was reverence, like the moment was sacred. Then he said, out loud, as if speaking to himself, "Born at 9:14 a.m. sharp little thing. Always laughed too loud." He remembered. He remembered the exact minute of her birth, at 9:14 a.m., on the dot. But he couldn't remember that he'd been married to me faithfully, fully, for 50 years. I sat there feeling the ground tilt. If it had been just a moment of sentimentality, I could have brushed it off. But it wasn't just remembering her birthday. It was remembering every detail of it. It was the tone he used. It was the glow on his face. It was the way he whispered her name under his breath like it tasted sweeter than oxygen. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe. He didn't even look up at me. He just typed something on his phone, nodded to himself, and went about his morning humming again. Meanwhile, my chest felt like someone had reached inside and twisted. You might think I'm exaggerating, but if you've ever spent decades believing you occupied a certain place in someone's heart, only to realize it was a placeholder, you'd understand. That moment was the spark. Small, quiet, but enough. It wasn't jealousy in the dramatic sense. I didn't resent a dead woman. I didn't hate her. I didn't even hate him. It was more like understanding. A sudden, horrible understanding that maybe I had never been first in his heart. Maybe I was second choice. Plan B. The consolation prize after life took something from him too soon. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there, hands folded, heart thudding, telling myself, "It's fine. You're overreacting. It's just a birthday. It's grief. It's history. You're being silly." But the words didn't soothe anything. And then, just when I thought it was over, he said something that sealed the feeling in stone. "I should visit her grave today," he murmured. It was still morning. Our anniversary morning. He didn't remember. Not a flicker of recognition touched his face when he said it. He planned to go honor his first wife, on the day he should have been honoring our 50 years together. In that exact moment, I felt something cold settle deep inside me. Not anger, not heartbreak. Something worse. Clarity. I stood up, quietly washed my coffee mug, dried it, and set it back on the shelf. My hands were steady, but only because the rest of me felt numb. Mark didn't notice me get up. Didn't ask where I was going. Didn't even look. He just kept humming, flipping to the sports section. I went upstairs, sat on the edge of our bed, and stared at the wedding photo on the nightstand. We were so young, so hopeful, so sure of our place in each other's lives. But now I wasn't sure of anything. That was the moment everything changed, even if I didn't know it yet. Because the instant clarity settled inside me, so did a single question, one that would pull me through the next weeks, the next discoveries, the unraveling of everything I thought was true. If he remembers her so deeply, what else has he been holding onto that I never knew? That question is what drove me. That question is what cracked open the life we'd built. I need you to understand something before I tell you how everything unraveled. My marriage wasn't unhappy. It wasn't passionate like in movies, and it wasn't effortless like in fairy tales, but it also wasn't a battlefield. Mark and I had a life built on everyday things. Shared meals, shared chores, shared worries, shared memories. For 50 years, that was enough. More than enough. So let me take you back to the comfortable rhythm we lived in. The one that made what happened later feel so surreal. Our house is a modest two-story home painted a muted blue-gray, the kind of color you choose when you're too practical to think about paint more than once a decade. The porch creaks in the winter, the door sticks when the humidity is high, and the kitchen window has a tiny crack in the corner from the time our son's baseball got away from him. I never fixed it. Somehow that crack was a reminder of the days when the house was full of noise and chaos and laughter. Every morning, I'd wake up before Mark, pull on my old robe, and pad my way downstairs. The first light of day always looked soft in that kitchen, dust floating lazily in beams of sunlight, the smell of the old wooden cabinets, the dent in the refrigerator from when our oldest daughter tried to climb it like a tree. The refrigerator hum was like background music to my entire life. I'd put on a pot of coffee, and right around the time the aroma filled the house, Mark's footsteps would thump down the stairs. That was our pattern for decades. Predictable, quiet, kind. The kind of routine you don't question. Mark wasn't a bad husband. He provided. He protected. He listened. Well, most of the time. He fixed everything around the house because he hated calling repairmen. He mowed the lawn every Saturday morning without fail. He shoveled the driveway before I even woke up when it snowed. He remembered to fill my gas tank if he noticed it was low. Those little things, they looked like love. Felt like it too. I always assumed he felt the same contentment I did. I thought we existed side by side in a shared understanding of what our life was. Not perfect, not always exciting, but stable, reliable, deep in its own way. The early years of our marriage were much noisier. Kids crying, homework papers scattered everywhere, late-night fever checks, school lunches, PTA meetings, bills stacked on the counter. We barely had a moment to breathe, let alone question anything. It was survival mode, as any parent knows. There was no room for doubt then. No room for comparisons. No room for wondering whether he still thought about the woman he lost. When we were young, Mark mentioned her occasionally. Not often, not dramatically, just enough to be honest. He told me her name was Elaine. Told me she died too young. Told me he didn't know how to mourn her properly at the time. Told me sometimes he still felt her absence like a phantom limb. I didn't resent him for that. How could I? I entered the story after tragedy had already carved him hollow. When we dated, his mother warned me gently. He loved her very much. Just be patient with him. I didn't force him to forget. I didn't compete with a ghost. And over time, her name stopped coming up. Not because I asked. He just stopped saying it. Decades went by where she lived only in one dusty picture frame Mark kept in the back of his dresser drawer. I never touched it. Never snooped. It wasn't mine to disturb. So when he remembered her birthday last spring with such intensity, it wasn't just that he'd forgotten our anniversary. It was that he hadn't shown that depth of emotion about her in years. Maybe ever. But let me not jump ahead. Part 2 is about the world I believed in before everything began to shift. After he mentioned visiting her grave that morning, our anniversary morning, I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I didn't lash out. Instead, I tried to find normalcy again, like smoothing a wrinkled blanket and pretending the crease isn't still there. I went through the motions. I watered my plants in the garden out back. They've always been my quiet refuge. Tomatoes, radishes, a few herbs, some marigolds just for color. The soil there feels familiar, always slightly too rocky no matter how much topsoil I add. But even the floors comfort me. I remember kneeling by the garden bed, humming quietly, pretending my mind wasn't running in circles, telling myself it wasn't a big deal, reasoning it out like women of my generation do. He forgot because he's getting older. He remembered her because grief is strange. You're making this too big. Just let it go. It felt almost dishonest to myself to ignore how much it hurt. But I did it anyway. Around lunchtime, he came back from town with groceries, milk, eggs, bread, the usual. He didn't look guilty. He didn't look conflicted. Just normal. Cheerful even. Picked up your favorite yogurt, he said with a little wink. Peach. It was the kind of small gesture that made me feel foolish for hiding. How do you hold anger towards someone who buys peach yogurt because he knows strawberry upsets your stomach? We ate lunch together. Sandwiches. Chips. Nothing special. He talked about the weather. About mowing the lawn the next day. About the neighbor's new dog that barked too much. Nothing in his voice hinted at torment or nostalgia or conflict. If anything, he seemed lighter than usual after returning home from wherever he'd gone. That should have concerned me, but I let it slide. The rest of the day passed quietly. I cooked dinner. He watched the baseball game. We talked about the kids. We talked about our son's new job in Cleveland. We talked about retirement accounts. Just life. I waited, hoping something would click in his mind. That he'd apologize for forgetting. That he'd suddenly wake up to the date on the calendar. But nothing came. When we went to bed that night, he rolled toward me instead of away. Rare, as he'd become more of a stay-on-your-side-of-the-mattress kind of sleeper in his older years. He kissed my shoulder and said, "Good night, sweetheart." I nearly cried right then. Not because it was sweet, but because it made the hurt sharper somehow. Like he was capable of warmth, just not where it mattered. The next morning, I convinced myself to breathe, to reset, to move forward without making it bigger. But small fractures don't heal by pretending they aren't there. They widen. A few days after the forgotten anniversary, our daughters came to visit. They brought flowers and a gift, a framed collage of photos from our wedding day and early years. It was beautiful, thoughtful, emotional. They burst into the living room with it, shouting, "Happy anniversary. 50 years. Mark froze. He stared at them, then at me. His face went pale. I saw confusion first, then dawning realization, then guilt. But what hurt the most wasn't the forgetting. It wasn't even the apology that followed. It was what he said, in front of our daughters, no less. I don't know how that slipped my mind. Slipped your mind? I thought. But remembering her, down to the minute, didn't slip anything. He hugged the girls. He hugged me. He apologized again, softer this time, just the two of us on the porch after the kids left. "I've just been scattered lately," he said. "Please don't read into it." I nodded, but something inside me whispered, "Read into it." Because his face when he realized he'd forgotten wasn't just guilt. It was fear. Not fear of hurting me. Fear of being caught. The next day, another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Small, subtle, nothing dramatic on its own. But looking back, it was the first breadcrumb. Mark came home from his morning walk later than usual. He always left at 8 a.m. sharp and returned by 9:15. Like clockwork. But that day he didn't come back until nearly 10. When he walked through the door, he looked flustered, breathless, as if he'd been somewhere he didn't expect to be, or doing something he didn't want to explain. "Long walk," he said, avoiding eye contact as he took off his jacket. "Everything okay?" I asked. Fine. Just lost track of time." It sounded harmless, but something in his voice was off. Too casual, too quick. Then the real warning sign came. He put his phone face down on the counter. Mark never puts his phone face down. Not in 50 years. That single gesture was the first undeniable shift, the first physical sign that something in his behavior had changed. Small, easy to miss, but unmistakable when you've lived with someone long enough to know their habits by heart. That night, as I washed dishes and he dozed on the couch, I found myself glancing at that phone over and over, wondering if his sudden forgetfulness about me was tangled up with his sudden sharp memory of her, wondering what else he remembered that he never told me, and wondering, most of all, whether the ghost I thought had faded decades ago had somehow become more alive to him than the woman standing right in front of him. I didn't have answers yet, but I was about to start looking. And what I found, the morning after he came home late from his walk, the morning he put his phone face down on the counter, I woke up with a pit in my stomach. Not fear, not anger, just awareness. Awareness that something small had shifted in the house. Not loudly, not dramatically. More like when you wake up in the night and realize the power went out, not because anything feels wrong, but because everything feels too still. That was me. A woman noticing a silence where there shouldn't be silence. I told myself I was being silly. I told myself I was making a mountain out of a molehill. But the truth is, after 50 years with someone, your instincts don't come from imagination. They come from muscle memory, from patterns engraved into your bones. When those patterns shift, your whole body notices before your mind does. Still, I tried to approach the day like normal. Mark left for his walk right on time, 8 a.m. His steps were brisk, purposeful, the same rhythm I'd heard for decades. He always walked the same route, past the park, past the old library, around the block, back home. Sometimes he stopped to talk to neighbors, sometimes he didn't. But his timing, that never changed, except it had changed the day before. And now, after seeing him deliberately place his phone face down, something he never did, I found myself paying attention to things I'd ignored for years. After he left, I cleaned the kitchen. I fed the small army of squirrels that always gather near my garden, expecting peanuts like they are paying rent. But the whole time, I felt this steady prickling under my skin. A sense that the world I lived in had seams I'd never noticed before, and something was pushing at them from underneath. At exactly 8:35 a.m., the first clue arrived. His phone buzzed. Loudly. Repeatedly. I glanced toward the counter. I hadn't meant to. The sound was just too sharp, too insistent to ignore, like a child tugging on your shirt. 3 texts in a row. Then a pause. Then 2 more. I froze with a dish towel in my hand. Now, let me be honest. I'm not the type of woman who snoops. I never have been. Not once in my entire marriage had I opened his phone, read his emails, dug through pockets. That wasn't who I was. That wasn't how we lived. But that morning, I wasn't thinking about trust or marital boundaries or even morality. I was thinking about his face when he remembered his first wife. I was thinking about the way he said her name. I was thinking about the quiet guilt he wore when the girls reminded him of our anniversary. I was thinking, is that guilt about forgetting, or guilt about something else? The phone stopped buzzing. Silence returned to the kitchen. I dried my hands. I walked to the counter. I didn't touch it, just looked. The screen had lit up just enough for me to catch a glimpse of something before it faded. A heart emoji. Not a full message. Not a name. Just a preview bubble with a single red heart. Now, could that be from one of the kids? Sure. Could it be from a grandchild? Sure. Could it be from a friend, or a group text, or maybe even a spam message? Of course. But the timing, the sudden shift in his behavior, made it feel like something else. Something I didn't want to believe but couldn't ignore. I didn't pick up the phone. Didn't check the message. Didn't do anything except stare at it for a long, uncomfortable moment. Because here's the truth. Sometimes the smallest evidence can feel like the biggest threat, not because of what it is, but because of what it could be. That possibility is what scared me. When Mark returned from his walk, right on time at 9:15, his first glance was toward the counter. Not toward me. Not toward the kitchen. Straight to the phone. He picked it up instantly, almost protectively, like someone might snatch it from him. He unlocked it quickly, glanced at the screen, and his whole face softened into something I hadn't seen in a long time. Not love. Not joy. Relief. He deleted something. I could tell by the way his thumb moved. Quick swipe. Tap. Tap. Then he placed the phone in his pocket instead of the counter. My heart thudded in my chest. He looked up at me and smiled. A normal smile. A practiced one. The kind you use when you want to hide something rather than share it. You okay? He asked lightly. Fine, I answered. But I wasn't. Not even close. Over the next few days, the cracks widened in ways only a wife would notice. He started taking longer walks. He started receiving more messages, silent ones he'd check hastily, always angling the screen away from me. He'd smile at his phone, sometimes even chuckle, then tuck it away like it was a secret he enjoyed keeping. And every time his phone beeped or chimed or buzzed, he'd stiffen just a little, just enough for me to see. One evening, he took his phone into the bathroom for his shower. Mark never does that. He's always been the type to leave his phone charging on the nightstand. But that night, He carried it in like it was glued to him. Another night, when I walked into the living room unexpectedly, he flinched. It was small, subtle, but unmistakable, like he'd been caught doing something he shouldn't. He turned the screen off too quickly, too deliberately. Still, I didn't say anything. Not yet. Let me explain why. When you've shared a life with someone for half a century, you don't jump to accusations. You don't flip a table. You don't storm out. Instead, you observe. You wait. You gather pieces until you know, truly know, whether what you're seeing is real or just the cruel tricks of doubt. Besides, I wasn't ready to believe my husband was cheating on me. Not at our age. Not after everything. Not after raising a family, surviving illnesses, losing parents, celebrating milestones. It felt absurd. It felt impossible. But so did forgetting your 50th anniversary and remembering your first wife's birthday with emotional clarity that could shatter steel. One afternoon, another clue fell into my lap, and this one wasn't subtle. Mark had gone out to get groceries. I was tidying the living room, fluffing pillows, dusting the shelves like I always do. When I picked up his jacket from the armchair to hang it, something slipped out of the pocket and landed on the floor. A receipt. From Pine Grove Cemetery. The same cemetery where Elaine, his first wife, is buried. The date? 2 days after our anniversary. The same morning he'd gone on that long walk he claimed he just got lost on. My breath caught in my throat. I turned the receipt over. Fresh flowers. Single bouquet. Paid in cash. My heart tightened like a fist. Look, visiting her grave wasn't the issue. I had always respected his grief. I had always accepted her place in his life story. But lying about it? Sneaking? Hiding? That wasn't grief. That wasn't mourning. That was secrecy. You only hide something when you don't want someone to know. I sat on the edge of the couch, holding that receipt, feeling the edges dig into my fingers. My chest felt heavy, like something was pressing down on me slowly, steadily. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I didn't want to create monsters where there weren't any. But remembering her birthday, forgetting our anniversary, long walks with changing times, the phone messages, the face-down phone, the soft, relieved smile at the screen, the cemetery receipt. None of it looked innocent anymore. Still, I needed something concrete, something undeniable, something that would tell me whether this was all in my head or whether my life was genuinely shifting under my feet. The real turning point came a week later. Mark left for his usual walk. I told myself not to watch the clock. I told myself not to obsess. But I did, because I couldn't help it anymore. 8 o'clock, he left. 9 o'clock, still gone. 9:20, no sign of him. 9:40, nothing. I stood at the kitchen window, staring down the street, telling myself he simply stopped to chat with someone. Maybe he needed longer exercise. Maybe he stopped at the store. But then, at exactly 9:47 a.m., I saw him. Not walking from his normal route. Not from town. Not from the park. He emerged from Pine Drive, the road leading to the cemetery. He wasn't carrying flowers this time. He was walking faster than usual. And he had the same look on his face I'd seen the day of our anniversary when he remembered Elaine. Soft, distant, almost peaceful. When he walked through the door, he barely glanced at me. He washed his hands, humming. He looked calm, too calm. Good walk? I asked, my voice steady as I could make it. Yeah, he said casually. Just the usual route. The usual route. A lie. A direct lie. That was the moment the uneasy feeling inside me sharpened into something clearer, something colder. Not paranoia. Not suspicion. Certainty. He was hiding something. Something big. Something tied to her memory, or someone else entirely. And I realized if I didn't start digging now, I might drown in assumptions before I ever reached the truth. So I made a decision. I would stop waiting. Stop tiptoeing. Stop giving him the benefit of the doubt. It was time to look deeper, carefully, quietly, methodically. Because whether the truth was about her, or someone new, or something entirely different, I needed to know. What I didn't realize yet was how far the truth stretched, how many years, how many layers, how many memories it would crack open. I wasn't just about to uncover secrets. I was about to uncover an entire second life. I didn't start by snooping. I started by watching. Because when you've been married to someone for 50 years, you don't need to read their messages to know when something is wrong. Their body tells the story. Their habits tell the story. Their silences, those tell the loudest story of all. So I watched. And Mark changed. Not overnight, not dramatically. Just small shifts that only a wife would notice. The kind of shifts that build slowly, like a hairline crack spreading under paint until the whole wall gives out. He began showering later in the evening, and he always took his phone with him. He started wearing cologne in the mornings, even on days when he wasn't going anywhere. He shaved more often. He hummed more. He checked the door twice before he left for his walks. None of it was huge, but all of it together. No one changes that much at 7 to 4 unless something, or someone, is pulling them. And even then, I told myself, don't assume. Don't jump. Don't explode. Then came the first undeniable piece of proof. It was a Thursday morning, and he'd driven into town to look for a new bird feeder. He had said it casually, grabbing his keys, giving me a peck on the cheek. But something about the way he straightened his shirt before he walked out the door made my chest go tight. So I did something I swore I'd never do. I wrote down the time he left. 9:12 a.m. When he didn't return by noon, I felt the familiar ache behind my ribs. He always came back by 11:30 at the latest. Always. At 12:18 p.m., I heard his car pull in. He walked in smelling faintly of cigarette smoke, but he doesn't smoke and never has. He claimed it must have been from the parking lot. But the scent wasn't faint enough. And that lie, small as it was, told me everything. Later that afternoon, while he napped on the couch, I finally crossed a line. I picked up his phone. And that moment, holding the weight of that device in my palm, felt like holding a live wire. My hand shook. My stomach churned. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of my own choices. Afraid of what I might find. Afraid of the truth I'd been circling. His phone required a passcode. Of course it did. He'd changed it months ago. But there was something he hadn't changed. The emergency contact screen. And there, under his name, was a detail he must have overlooked. Text messages preview. ON. Which meant even with the screen locked, some notifications still appeared. Short previews. Names. Emojis. I set the phone down, steadying my breath, waiting. And like clockwork, the phone buzzed at 12:44 p.m. My heart dropped when I saw the name. El Carter. Not one of our daughters. Not a neighbor. Not a family friend I knew. The message preview was just a sliver, but enough to gut me. Had a wonderful time this more. My vision blurred. I froze. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. I had seen enough. More than enough. He stirred on the couch then, shifting, about to wake up. Instinctively, I placed the phone back where he left it, exact angle, exact spot, and stepped away with shaking hands. My heart was pounding so hard I swear I could feel it in my ears. He stretched, yawned, blinked, and smiled at me like nothing was wrong. Have a good nap, I asked, my voice steady by pure force of will. Best sleep I've had all week, he said lazily. Something inside me cracked then. Not shattered, cracked. Just enough to let the cold in. But I wasn't done. I needed more. I needed facts, not half glimpses. I needed the full truth because when you confront someone after 50 years of marriage, you don't do it on hunches. You do it with hard evidence. So I made a plan. I waited for the next morning, Friday, because that's the day he always went to the bank, almost like ritual. He'd leave at 9 a.m. and come home by 10. When he left, I followed. Yes, I followed my husband of 50 years. I don't feel proud saying that, but I don't feel ashamed, either. He drove toward town, like expected. I stayed 2 cars behind, far enough not to draw attention. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. My heart thudded with every turn. I kept telling myself, you might be wrong. You might be wrong. But then he passed the bank, and he didn't slow down. He kept driving down Willow Road, toward the far end of town. A quieter area, home to older houses, a few empty lots, a handful of old trees. My breath caught when he turned onto Maple Lane, a dead-end street. A street with maybe 5 houses. He parked in front of a tan single-story home with a white porch. I didn't recognize it, but the mailbox had a name. Carter. My stomach dropped. He got out of the car, straightened his shirt, smoothed his hair. Then he walked to the front door like he'd done it before, comfortably, confidently. And before I could even process what I was seeing, the door opened. A woman, maybe in her late 60s, maybe early 70s, stepped out. Short silver hair, nice cardigan, warm smile. She hugged him. He hugged her back. Not a polite neighbor hug. Not a stiff acquaintance hug. A familiar hug. An affectionate one. Something practiced. I felt dizzy. I stayed in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. My whole body trembled. It felt like someone had scooped my insides out and replaced them with ice. I watched them talk on the porch. Laugh. Lean close. Touch each other's arms. At one point she handed him a small tin, maybe cookies, maybe something she baked. He smiled, thanked her, lifted the tin to his face like he was smelling something nostalgic. He had never done that with my baking. I don't remember how long I sat there. 10 minutes, maybe 15. Long enough to see everything I needed to see. When he finally left her porch, he turned around and waved as he walked backward toward his car, like a teenager leaving a first date. My chest ached. No, ache is too gentle of a word. It felt like a bruise blooming under my ribs, spreading slowly. He drove off, heading back toward town. I let him get far ahead before pulling out and driving home on autopilot. When I walked into the house, everything looked the same as always. The kitchen light with its warm yellow glow, the stack of mail on the counter, the faint smell of coffee. But all of it felt fake suddenly, like scenery in a play I didn't know I was performing in. Mark came home 15 minutes later. Ran into traffic, he said casually, putting the tin on the counter. Someone was baking cookies outside the bank. Gave me some. He lied to my face, without blinking. I stayed at the tin, red metal, flower pattern on the lid. Homemade, personal, the kind of tin you only give to someone you know well. He saw me looking and smiled. You'll love these, he said. Lady said they are her specialty. Lady. He couldn't even be bothered to come up with a name. I felt something inside me stop, literally stop, like a clock that suddenly loses its gears. I nodded, wiped my hands on a towel, and said I needed to check the laundry. But really, I went upstairs and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, feeling the ground underneath my life tilt a little more. Even then, I wasn't done. I needed more truth, deeper truth. So that evening, after he went to bed early, claiming he was tired, I went downstairs and quietly opened the tin. Inside was a small folded note under the cookies. My breath froze in my throat as I opened it. Had a wonderful time this morning. Let's do Wednesday. L. Everything inside me caved inward. Wednesday. A plan. A schedule. A routine. This wasn't new. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't grief. This was ongoing. I felt like I was floating outside my own body, watching myself sit at that kitchen table with a note in my hands and a lifetime collapsing around me. And yet, even with that proof, even with everything I'd witnessed, some part of me still hoped I was wrong. Hoped there was a reasonable explanation. Hoped he was helping an old friend, supporting a widow, doing something kind. But hope is the cruelest liar of them all. Because the next morning, I took the final step. When he left for his walk, I opened his dresser drawer. For decades, he'd kept a framed photo of Elaine in there. I never touched it, never disturbed it. But when I opened that drawer, her picture wasn't there. In its place was a different photo, a recent one. A photo of him and the woman from Maple Lane. Smiling, standing close, looking happy. Underneath it was a slip of paper, a handwritten note I wasn't meant to see. My sweet Mark, you make me feel alive again. My chest caved in, because there it was, the lowest point. The truth so sharp I felt it in my bones. I wasn't the woman he made feel alive. Not anymore. Maybe not for years. I closed the drawer gently, not because I wanted to be gentle, but because I was afraid if I didn't, I'd scream loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. That's where part 4 ends. With me sitting on the floor of our bedroom, shaking, breath broken, heart bruised, the truth laid bare in front of me, and knowing the time for quiet observation was over. I wish I could tell you I confronted him immediately, that I marched downstairs, shoved the photo and the note into his hands, and demanded the truth with fire in my voice. But that's not how 50-year marriages end, not in real life. In real life, there's a pause, a long, heavy stillness, a moment when you sit with the truth and let it settle into your bones like winter cold. That was me on the bedroom floor, holding the evidence of my husband's second life, breathing through the weight of it. My heart didn't race anymore. My tears didn't come. It was all strangely calm inside me, like the eye of a storm. And in that calm, something shifted. I wasn't going to react emotionally. I wasn't going to beg or plead. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me hurt. I was going to think, plan, watch. Because when someone betrays you this quietly, this thoroughly, you don't respond loudly. You respond smart. I wiped my face, stood up slowly, and placed everything back exactly where I found it. The photo, the note, the tin. Not to hide it, not to pretend, but because I knew the more normal things looked, the more freely he would continue, and the easier it would be to see the full shape of his betrayal. For the next few days, I became an observer in my own marriage, a ghost in my own home. I watched his patterns. He left the house at the same times. He got the same secretive messages. He hid his phone. He wore nicer shirts on certain days. He came home smelling faintly of perfume, something floral and sweet, something I never wore. And as I watched him, something in me hardened. Not anger, not hatred, resolve. Because the longer I studied him, the clearer it became that this wasn't a momentary lapse. This wasn't a single mistake. This wasn't a lonely old man being comforted by a friend. This was deliberate, sustained, developed. He had built something with her, something he nurtured, protected, chose. And while I'd spent years believing our marriage was the safe harbor of his life, he'd been building another home in quiet corners of the world I wasn't allowed to see. But here's the part that truly changed me. I realized I didn't want a screaming match. I didn't want broken dishes or slammed doors or emotional theatrics. I wanted truth. I wanted control. I wanted justice. Women my age don't get angry the way younger women do. We don't explode. We don't storm out. We endure. We observe. We calculate. And then, when the time is right, we strike in a way that leaves no room for denial, no room for excuses, no room for revisionist history. So that's what I prepared for. The first step, information. I knew her name now, at least the initial, El Kata, which meant I needed a full name. I waited until Mark went to bed early again. He'd been doing that more often, claiming he was tired but really wanting privacy for his late-night texting. I watched him disappear into the bedroom, shut the door, then listened for the sound of his shower. When the water started running, I opened his laptop. It was a risk, a big one. Mark wasn't tech-savvy, but he knew enough to use passwords. Except he'd used the same password for the last 15 years. Our youngest daughter's birthday. I typed it. It opened. My heart beat once, slow and heavy, as the screen lit up. Most people would look for messages first. Not me. I went to his internet history, and there it was, plain as day. Lydia Carter Obituary, Pine Grove Volunteer Gardening Club, Maple Lane Neighborhood Association Directory, Widow Support Meeting Schedule. Widow Support Meetings. And suddenly it all made sense. The day he got lost on his walk, the day he went to the cemetery, the emotional softness he'd been carrying like a freshly polished stone. He was reconnecting to grief, or maybe hiding inside it. I clicked on the widow support link, the meeting roster, and there her name was. Lydia and Carter, Maple Lane resident, widowed 8 years. Her husband had died of heart complications, so she was grieving too. Two lonely people, both widowed in some way, her by death, him by memory, finding each other in the spaces where grief meets longing. I sat back in the chair and let the truth expand. This wasn't just an affair. It was an escape. From aging, from identity, from responsibility, from the weight of a life already lived. He wasn't seeking passion. He was seeking a version of himself he thought still existed. A man who could make someone feel special again, who could be someone's new beginning instead of someone's comfortable middle. And that hurt in a different way. But it also strengthened my resolve. The second step, evidence. I couldn't confront him with suspicions. I needed concrete proof. So I waited until he left for town again. I drove straight to Maple Lane. My hands trembled on the wheel, but I forced myself to park across from Lydia's house. The curtains were open. She wasn't home. Her driveway was empty. Good. I stepped out of my car, walked up to her porch, and checked her mailbox. Not to steal anything, I'd never crossed that line, but to confirm something. The name on the mailbox was the same one he had as a contact. L. Carter. I looked at the porch. The flowers. The little welcome mat with a cardinal on it. A single cardinal. Funny. Mark always said cardinals reminded him of Elaine, his first wife, because she loved them. And hey, Lydia had one right on her doormat. Coincidence? Maybe. But maybe it wasn't a coincidence at all. Maybe Mark chose her because she reminded him of the woman he lost. Or maybe grief and infidelity blur together in ways I can't understand. I stepped off the porch. I didn't snoop further. Didn't knock. Didn't peek through windows. I didn't need to. I had enough puzzle pieces now to complete the picture. The third step, decision. When I got home, Mark was already there, sipping coffee, reading the paper, acting like the world wasn't about to collapse. Where'd you run off to? He asked lightly. Grocery store, I lied. He smiled. He believed it. I sat across from him at the kitchen table, studying the man I'd shared a life with, the man now split between two worlds. And instead of seeing him as a husband, I saw him as a stranger. A man who wanted comfort without responsibility, affection without history, romance without the weight of aging. Someone who wanted to feel like he was in the early chapters of life again instead of the last ones. The pain of that realization was sharp, but the clarity was sharper. I knew then I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't chase him. I would bring the truth to the surface, carefully, deliberately, in a way that exposed everything without me losing myself in the process. Because if there was one advantage of being the wife of 50 years, it was this. I knew how to unravel him quietly, the same way he unraveled me. The fourth step, plan the reveal. I thought long and hard about how to confront him. Should I tell the kids first? No, I didn't want them caught in the middle. Should I go to Lydia? No, that would make me look desperate. And besides, she wasn't the one who made vows to me. Should I blindside him, corner him, scream? No, that would give him power. So I decided on something else. Something dignified. Something calm. Something devastating. I planned to confront him on a morning he'd least expect it. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere symbolic. Our anniversary photo album. The one our daughters made. The one filled with 50 years of memories. I placed the evidence inside the album, making each piece a page in the story of our life. The cemetery receipt, the note, the tin, the photo of him and Lydia. And I would sit across from him as he turned each page. Let him see the life he'd built, then watch the life he'd broken. Not through yelling, not through rage, through truth. Cold, gentle, final truth. The fifth step, prepare emotionally. Planning the reveal gave me strength, but it didn't erase the pain. Nights were the hardest. Lying beside him, hearing him breathe evenly, watching him roll away from me to check his phone, smelling that faint floral perfume in his shirt collar when he undressed. That's when the ache came back. The grief, the betrayal. But I reminded myself, the hurt is temporary, the truth is permanent, and the justice will be clean. I practiced what I'd say. Simple, steady sentences. Mark, I know. Here is the proof. I want honesty, now. Not dramatic, not emotional, just final. the calm before my own storm. The sixth step set the stage. I chose Wednesday, his special day with her. He woke early, humming, shaved, wore his nicer shirt, sprayed cologne, packed gum in his pocket. He always chewed gum before seeing her. When he came downstairs, I was already waiting. The anniversary album sat on the kitchen table. He didn't notice it at first. He was too busy checking his phone. But when he finally looked up and saw me sitting there, hands folded, album in front of me, he paused, just long enough for me to know. He felt something coming. He froze the moment he saw the album. Just stopped mid-step, mid-breath, mid-life, almost. His keys dangled from his fingers. His phone was still in his hand. The smile he'd been wearing, that soft, secret one, vanished so quickly it looked yanked off his face. I didn't say a word. Not yet. I sat still. Come. Hands folded on the table. The album, our album, sitting open in front of me like a court summons. He swallowed. Linda, what's all this? I motioned to the chair across from me. Sit. He hesitated. Just for a second. Then he did. He looked at the album. Then at me. Then back at the album. What's going on? He asked, voice thin. I didn't answer his question. I tapped the album's first page. He opened it. Page 1, our wedding photo. Young, radiant, clueless. He blinked, confused. Page 2, our kids when they were little. He nodded stiffly, waiting for the punch. Page 3, the cemetery receipt. His whole body jerked. His mouth opened, then closed. He didn't speak. Good. Keep turning. Page 4, the note from Lydia. Had a wonderful time this morning. Let's do Wednesday. His nostrils flared. He inhaled sharply, like he'd been punched. Still, I didn't speak. Page 5, the photo of the two of them. Smiling. Close. Happy in a way he hadn't looked with me in years. He touched the edge of the picture with trembling fingers, then pulled his hand back as if burned. What? He coughed. Where did you get this? I still didn't answer, because the truth was right in front of him, on glossy paper, in ink, in his own handwriting, in his own actions. He flipped to the next page. It was blank. He looked up at me, and now I spoke. 4 words. Quiet. Clear. Cold. I know everything, Mark. He opened his mouth. Don't lie, I cut in. He shut it. His whole face sagged, not in sadness, but in defeat. The kind of defeat that comes when a man realizes he has nothing left to hide behind. The silence between us grew dense, heavy, suffocating. I waited. He was the one who needed to speak now. After nearly a full minute, he finally did. Linda, I'm so sorry. Not enough. Tell me, I said. All of it. His hands shook on the table. He pressed them flat like he needed to brace himself. It wasn't supposed to become anything, he whispered. I met her at one of those grief meetings last fall. I only went because after my heart scare, I thought maybe I needed help dealing with everything. He didn't say Elaine's name. He didn't need to. And she was grieving too, he continued. We talked. It felt good to feel understood. He looked up, his eyes wet and desperate. It was just talking at first, then coffee, then walks, then... He stopped. That was enough. I didn't need details. I asked one question. How long? His Adam's apple bobbed. 8 months. 8 months. I felt the words hit me like a physical blow, but I didn't flinch. He kept talking, rambling now, unraveling. I didn't mean to hurt you. I never wanted. I never meant. It wasn't like with you. It wasn't like with Elaine. It just... I held up my hand. He stopped. Don't compare us, I said. Don't you dare. His jaw tightened. His eyes fell. Did you love her? I asked. He hesitated, too long, and in that hesitation was the truth. He whispered, I don't know. That was worse than yes, because not knowing meant he'd allowed himself to drift, to choose her in small moments, to make space for her in places he swore belonged only to his past. I leaned in slightly. Did she know you were married? Yes, he whispered. She said she understood. That companionship isn't always romantic. That aging is lonely. I told her we were fine, you and I, but I said nothing. He kept digging his own grave. She didn't ask me to leave. She didn't pressure me. She just gave me something I didn't realize I was missing. And what was that? I asked quietly. He closed his eyes. Attention. The word dropped between us like a stone in deep water. Attention. After 50 years, he wanted attention. From someone new. Someone easier. Someone who didn't know every wrinkle of his soul. I exhaled slowly. So you betrayed me for flattery. His eyes shot open. No, it wasn't. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, I said. Silence again. Then he whispered something that twisted the knife. She reminded me of who I was when I was young. I stared at him, and I didn't. He flinched like I'd slapped him. I didn't mean. Yes, I said calmly. You did. He leaned forward, voice breaking. Linda, please. I love you. I never stopped loving you. I got lost. 8 months lost. I asked. He pressed his palms to his eyes. I'm a stupid old man, he said. A weak one. I know that. But I never planned to leave you. That sentence, the one cheaters love to use, slid right off me. I wasn't fighting for my marriage anymore. I wasn't fighting at all. I had the truth. I had control. And now, I wanted resolution. Mark, I said, voice even. Look at me. He did. Eyes red. Face pale. Hands trembling. You're going to tell the kids, I said. Your daughters. Your son. You're going to explain exactly what you did and why you did it. He shook his head violently. No, please. Don't drag them into this. It'll break their hearts. It won't be me breaking their hearts, I said. It'll be you. He swallowed hard. Linda, I'm begging you. Please, let me fix this privately. There's no privacy left, I said. You ended that. He sagged. Completely. A man collapsing inward. What do you want from me? He whispered. I stared at him. For 50 years, I'd softened edges, bridged gaps, patched wounds. But not today. Honesty, I said. From this moment forward. No more lies. No more secrets. You cut the ties with her. Today. Right now. You tell her it's over. He stared at the table. And after that, he asked quietly. After that, I said, we decide if there's anything left to salvage. He nodded slowly. Defeated. Broken. But I wasn't done. Get your phone. His hand trembled as he reached for it. Call her, I said. Put it on speaker. His eyes widened in panic. Now. He hesitated. Mark, I said, leaning in, voice razor sharp. If you don't call her right now, I will. And I promise you, I won't be gentle. His breath stuttered. He unlocked the phone with shaking hands. Scrolled. Pressed a contact. Lydia. It rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Hello. Her voice. Soft. Warm. Familiar. He swallowed. Lydia. I can't. This has to stop. Silence. Then her voice again, confused. Ma? What do you mean? He looked at me. I stayed back. Finish it. I'm married, he said. And she knows. Everything. A beat. Then Lydia spoke, gentle, almost sad. I figured this would happen eventually. He blinked. What? You were holding back, she said. Every week. I knew you wouldn't leave her. I didn't want you to. I never asked you to. But I also knew someone would get hurt. I'm sorry, Mark. She wasn't crying. He wasn't either. It felt strangely anticlimactic. 2 people who had created a storm now speaking in drizzle. He inhaled shakily. I can't talk anymore, he said. Goodbye. Goodbye, Mark. He hung up. Silence filled the room like heavy fog. Then he whispered, voice small. I'm so ashamed. Good, I said. You should be. His shoulders shook. He covered his face. I didn't comfort him, didn't reach for him, didn't soften the moment. This wasn't the time for healing. This was the time for reckoning. After a full minute, I stood. He looked up. Where are you going? He asked, voice cracking. To get some air, I said, and to think. He rose partly from his chair. Linda, please don't leave me. I paused at the doorway. I'm not leaving, I said, but I am stepping back. His face broke then, a mixture of guilt, fear, loss, and regret. I let it sink in. Then I walked out the front door, closed it behind me, and breathed for the first time in months. The truth was out. The lies were dead. The affair was over. But the wreckage? The broken pieces. Those were waiting for me at home. I walked for a long time. Not quickly, not angrily, just walked. Letting the cool Pennsylvania air fill my lungs, letting the world settle back into its normal colors after the explosion that had just taken place in my kitchen. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was just quiet, heavy, necessary. I'd spent months tiptoeing around the truth. Now it was out. I wasn't sure what to do with that freedom yet. I walked the sidewalks I knew by heart, past the park where our kids played, past the house where Mrs. Evans used to bake cookies for every child in the neighborhood, past the old library with the crooked flagpole. Everything looked the same, but I didn't feel the same. By the time I returned home, the sun had started dipping low, stretching long shadows across the yard. I paused before opening the door, bracing myself for whatever waited inside. I didn't know if he'd be angry, or defensive, or devastated. Turns out, he was devastated. I found him sitting at the kitchen table exactly where I left him. Same chair, same posture, same album in front of him. But something in him had collapsed, like a building gutted from the inside. His eyes were red, his face blotchy, his hands still trembling just slightly. He looked up when I walked in. Linda, he said softly, not pleading this time, not panicked, just tired, old, human. I sat across from him, not touching, not comforting, not cruel, either, just present. The silence between us wasn't angry. It wasn't sharp or bitter. It was tired, bruised, worn like the grooves in our front porch boards. Finally, he spoke. I never thought I'd be the man who did something like this. I let him talk, not forgiving, not agreeing, just listening. I thought I was stronger, he continued. Better than that, after everything we've lived through. I thought I knew myself. He swallowed, but I was weak, and selfish, and stupid. I didn't argue. He wasn't wrong. For a moment, he ran both hands through his hair, nervous, restless, as if searching for an explanation that didn't make him look wise. There's no excuse, he said, and there's no story I can tell to soften it. I crossed the line. I betrayed you. His voice cracked on that last sentence. I took a slow breath. Why, huh? I asked quietly. Why now? He stayed at the table. Not guilty now, reflective. I felt old, he said. Older than I ever expected to feel. When my heart was acting up last year, when the doctor started talking about medications and risks, something inside me shifted. He looked up at me with damp eyes. I realized my life had gotten small, predictable, kind, safe, but small. And with her? I asked. With her, he admitted. I felt like there were still chapters left, even if they were small ones. Hearing that stung in a way I can't put words to, because I had spent a lifetime building that small life with him, that predictable routine, that safe harbor. And to him, it had become a reminder of aging, not a comfort. I swallowed the bitterness and spoke calmly. You could have talked to me. He nodded quickly, desperately. I know, and I didn't. That's on me. There were 1,000 things I wanted to say, 1,000 ways I wanted to tell him how deeply he'd cut me, 1,000 questions I knew would only make the wound wider. But instead, I asked, are you in love with her? He froze. No, he said firmly. No, I cared about her. I enjoyed her company. But love? No. Are you grieving Elaine more than you told me? He looked away. That's more complicated, he whispered. Some days I miss who I was with her. Some days I miss her laughter. Some days I miss being 25 and stupid. I stayed quiet. He turned back to me. But none of that has anything to do with how much I love you. I didn't respond. Because love isn't always enough. Love doesn't erase betrayal. Love doesn't rebuild trust. Love doesn't fix what was broken deliberately. But I let him say it. He reached across the table, tentatively, slowly, like approaching a scared animal. I didn't take his hand. He noticed. He pulled back. I'll do whatever you want, he said. Therapy, separation, whatever you need. I won't fight you. I nodded, not agreeing, not refusing, just acknowledging. Tonight, I said, you're sleeping in the guest room. He accepted that instantly. Of course. And tomorrow, I added, you're calling the kids. You're telling them the truth, because I won't lie for you. His face crumpled slightly, pain flickering across it. But he nodded. Yes, whatever you say. I stood. He stood too. Instinct, maybe. Habit. Linda, he said softly, I don't want to lose you. I held his gaze. You already did, I said. You just don't know what comes after that yet. He looked like I'd hit him, but I didn't take it back. It was the truth. He stepped aside as I walked toward the stairs. No touching, no reaching, no desperate apologies. Just two old people standing in the ruins of a life they spent decades building. When I reached the top of the stairs, I paused. For a moment, I thought about looking back, giving him something to hold on to. But I didn't. I entered our bedroom, or what used to be our bedroom, alone. The days after. The next day, he called the kids. I didn't listen, but I heard enough through the closed door, the shaking voice, the pauses, the tears. I heard my daughter shouting, my son swearing, the disbelief in all of them. And I sat on the bed, staring at the window, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace, not happiness, not relief, just peace, like shedding a heavy coat. Later that evening, he knocked gently on the door. Can we talk? No, I said. He didn't argue. He slept in the guest room again. And the night after, and the night after that, we moved around each other like ghosts. Polite, quiet, careful, a kind of truce. The slow shift. After a week, he made an offer. Couples counseling. Together. Please, just give it a chance. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. Instead, I took a day to drive out to a lake near our old picnic spot. I sat on a bench, watching ducks glide across the water, feeling the weight of 50 years in my chest. Did I want a divorce? Did I want to rebuild? Did I want to live alone for the first time since I was 21? I didn't know. But I knew this. I wasn't choosing out of fear. Not anymore. When I came home, he was sitting in the living room, hands clasped, waiting like a man awaiting a verdict. I sat across from him. We can try counseling, I said, but I'm not promising anything. His shoulders sagged, a mix of relief and grief. That's more than I deserve, he whispered. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. But it was what I was willing to give at that moment. The aftermath of truth. The weeks that followed were slow. Hard. Uneven. Therapy wasn't easy. Some sessions were all silence. Some were all tears. Some were angry, mostly from me. I didn't hold back. I told him how deeply he had humiliated me. How small I felt picking up that tin of cookies. How I would never again look at the month of April without remembering the sting of betrayal. He didn't defend himself. He listened. He absorbed. He apologized. Not once, repeatedly. Genuinely. And slowly, painfully slowly, the rigid wall between us began to soften. Not crumble. Not disappear. But soften. We sat on opposite sides of the couch, then eventually next to each other. We ate meals in silence, then sometimes with quiet conversation. He stopped hiding his phone, stopped wearing cologne for his walks, stopped leaving the house without telling me exactly where he was going. None of this rebuilt trust, but it prevented further damage. And me, healing didn't look like forgiveness. It looked like small reclamations. I joined a book club. I started going to the farmer's market alone. I went out with my neighbor Janice for coffee, something I'd always put off. I let myself enjoy my own company in ways I hadn't in decades. For the first time in years, I existed outside my marriage, and I liked it. I wasn't rebuilding us yet. I was rebuilding me. And slowly, deliberately, with caution and boundaries, I let him witness that rebuilding, not as a reward, but as a reminder that I wasn't the same woman he betrayed, and he wasn't the same man who walked into another woman's house on Maple Lane. Where we stand now, months later, we were still in counseling, still sleeping in separate rooms, still walking on careful ground, but we were also speaking more honestly than we had in years. Sometimes he cried. Sometimes I did. Sometimes we just sat in silence, letting the space between us breathe. Did I forgive him? No, not yet. Maybe not ever in the way people imagine forgiveness. But did I abandon the life we built? No, because marriages aren't fairy tales. They are not perfect. They are not symmetrical. They are living, flawed things, and sometimes the cracks tell a more truthful story than the polished parts. We were learning to exist in the aftermath without pretending the past hadn't happened. And that, for now, was enough. There's a strange kind of quiet that settles in your life after the worst storm passes. Not peace, not closure, not even healing, not yet. Just quiet. That's where the next chapter of my life began. Not with forgiveness, not with reconciliation, not with some grand revelation about love conquering all. Just quiet. Space. Room to breathe again. I needed that. Mark needed that. And honestly, our marriage needed that too, a moment suspended between what we were and what we might still become. In those quiet months, I learned more about myself than I had in years. I learned that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just whispers, keep going. I learned that heartbreak doesn't kill you, it reveals you, shows you where you bend, shows you where you break, shows you what matters and what never did. I learned that love, even after 50 years, is fragile. Not because it's weak, but because we are human, and humans are messy and flawed and capable of hurting the people they cherish most. And I learned that surviving betrayal doesn't make you foolish. It makes you human. People love to judge from the outside. I'd leave. I'd throw him out. I'd never stay. But the truth is, nobody knows what they'd really do until the ground under their life cracks open. Until their entire history stands in front of them, begging to be saved or surrendered. I didn't stay out of fear. I didn't stay out of habit. And I certainly didn't stay because I thought what he did was forgivable. I stayed because the story wasn't finished yet. Because 50 years deserved a real ending, not one written in anger or panic or shock. Maybe we'll rebuild. Maybe we'll drift apart. Maybe we'll choose a new kind of partnership that looks nothing like marriage, but still carries the weight of the life we made together. And maybe I'll eventually forgive him, not to ease his conscience, but to free my own heart. Or maybe forgiveness isn't the right word at all. Maybe understanding is enough. But here's what I know today. I'm not afraid anymore. Not of starting over. Not of living differently. Not of being alone if that's the road ahead. Not of sleeping in a quiet room that used to be full of shared breaths and shared warmth. And I'm not afraid of him either, not of his choices, not of his mistakes, not of the version of him I didn't know existed. Because the moment I grabbed the truth and held it in my own hands, I stopped being small. I stopped being passive. I stopped being the wife who waited in the kitchen while he wandered into other lives. I became someone else entirely, someone older, yes, but also braver, sharper, wiser. When our children asked why I didn't leave immediately, I told them the truth. Because healing takes time, and decisions deserve clarity. And you don't walk away from a whole lifetime without first honoring the pieces worth keeping. Some people understood. Some didn't. That's all right. We're all just trying to do the best we can with the hearts we've been given and the wounds we've survived. And as for Mark, he's trying. Really trying. Not with grand gestures or dramatic apologies. Those don't work in a long marriage. He's trying in small ways. Morning coffee made quietly. Phone left face up on the counter. Walks taken only after telling me where he's going. Late night talks where he admits fears he spent decades pretending he didn't have. Will that be enough? Maybe. Maybe not. But here's the thing. I'm not rebuilding for him. I'm rebuilding for me. If he fits into the structure I'm creating, good. If he doesn't, I'll still have something solid to stand on. That's what healing looks like at 71. It isn't fireworks. It's not dramatic. It's not loud or glamorous. Healing at my age is knowing that even after half a century, you can still start over without starting from scratch. It's knowing that love doesn't disappear just because it's wounded, and trust doesn't rebuild itself overnight, but both can grow again, slowly, quietly, stubbornly, if they have sunlight and honesty and time. And it's knowing that you survive. No matter what. You survive. And sometimes, that's the whole moral. I'm not here to tell you to stay in a broken marriage. I'm not here to tell you to leave one, either. I'm here to tell you that your life is allowed to be complicated, and your choices don't have to make sense to anyone but you. And if you're sitting in your own quiet storm, heart bruised, trust shattered, breath unsteady, please hear me. You are stronger than the moment that broke you. You are wiser than the lies that wounded you. And you deserve a life that feels like it belongs to you. No matter how long you've lived, or how far you've come, or how deeply you've been hurt, you still get to choose what comes next. You still get to write the ending. And if my story reached you, truly reached you, then maybe that quiet strength is already waking up inside you. Thank you for walking with me through all of this. Thank you for listening to a stranger's heartbreak and hope. And now, as promised, did you like my story? Please like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of mine travels. And here's my final thought. One clean sentence, the moral of all of it. Even after a lifetime, you are still allowed to choose yourself.